Hello, everyone. Greetings. We gather here today to join a panel discussion on post pandemic architecture education, challenges, and way forward, jointly organized by Department of Architecture, Daffodil International University, and Chitkara School of Planning and Architecture, Chitkara University, Punjab. I am Lamia Fariha. I am the moderator of this session. I am working as a lecturer in Daffodil International University. I am very pleased to be joined by our distinguished panelists from these two universities. We have with us Sheikh Mohammad Rizwan, who is an architect and an academic. He is currently teaching at the Department of Architecture, Daffodil International University, as an assistant professor and head of the department. His area of research interest includes urban design and community space design for both urban and rural contexts based on behavioral studies. He was the coordinator of the Smart City events organized by FNF Bangladesh and DIU for 3 years. He is the founder of the initiative Grammo, a participatory rural residential research workshop program. He has recently completed working as a local team leader on participatory urban design in Shahjahanpur, Dhaka, a World Bank funded project with Superwind Vienna. He is searching for a sustainable coherence between the city and the village through his practice and research. We welcome our very esteemed head of the department, Sheikh Mohammad Rizwan Sir. We have with us Kanika Bansal, who is presently working as a professor and dean academics of advanced studies with the Chitkara School of Planning and Architecture, Chitkara University, Punjab, India. She is pursuing PhD from Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, in built heritage conservation in the colonial hill towns of India. An academic of high merit, Professor Kanika Bansal has a number of research papers published in various national and international conferences and journals of repute. She has been accredited with a number of awards for her contribution and has been invited as a resource person at various national and international platforms. Very recently, Professor Kanika has visited the Metropolia University of Applied Science, Finland, under the Teacher Mobility Program funded by the Erasmus and the International Credit Mobility of the European Union, with an objective to explore the possibilities of strengthening positive synergies between Chitkara University and Metropolia University of Applied Sciences, comprehending their pedagogy and also engaging in their teaching learning activities. We also have students from both the universities who would be joining the panel discussion. We will get to know them along the way. So welcome all to today's session. To start today's discussion, I would like to discuss the key implications. At the end of 2019, the world has struck by COVID-19, and in the beginning of the 2020, the world has completely come to a standstill. During the pandemic, the major challenge of architecture studies was to carry out works remotely from home, which we have managed to carry online. Nonetheless, after 2 years, we are back in normal life again, demanding our physical presence. The architecture education requires mandatory physical involvement in different steps such as site visit, model making, etc. It was challenging to carry out and guide such steps online, creating a learning gap during the pandemic. After the pandemic, the recovery period is in fact taking time more than we have anticipated. So we are here to discuss the challenges to deliver lectures during pandemic and its impact on the students after the pandemic that has influenced the teaching. Also, now after the pandemic, we are fighting to keep up the normalization process, and our question would be, are we trying to accept the normalities that we once have accepted, or should we aim for something more resilient, a resilient teaching pedagogy moving forward. I would like to welcome our Assistant Professor and Head of the Department, Daffodil International University, Sheikh Mohammad Rizwan, to share his insight on this. Sir, please.
Thank you, Gloria ma'am, and welcome, Konika ma'am. It's nice to see you again. I remember in 2020, you gave a lecture to the students on one of our housing projects. Thank you for having this kind of collaboration with us.
Thank you, sir, for inviting me.
Okay, so I will share my screen now as the today's topic is about the post-pandemic architecture education. Um, So, ma'am, can you confirm, like, Lamia, ma'am, is it visible, my screen?
Yes, sir, it is fine. We can hear you properly and we can see your presentation, sir. You can go on.
Okay, thank you. So, I want to have a small background, like Daffodil University and Chitkara School of Planning and Architecture. We both done several collaboration in terms of three of our teachers participated in their doctorate research program, consortium program, and I remember in the during the pandemic, since I visited the Chitkara University back in 2017 or 18. At that time, we get to know each other, and jointly in during the pandemic, we done some research work also with some professors, and that was about the architecture education. Because the architecture education, as many of you know, it's a very practical, hands-on subject. We make models, we need to do site visits, and several physical activities, a prior requirement. So during the pandemic, everything was stand down or shut down. So we had to think how to engage students more and what would be the tools. So jointly we did a research, and I also know that Konika ma'am also done research on these tough times. So to this panel discussion is not about what happened, because we have gone through the pandemic phase, and now when we are thinking about getting back to a normal life, so it's kind of a questioning again, and we are facing some challenges. So we both discussed about it, and we thought about to share with others and get feedback about this. Like, to me, from my personal experience, post pandemic challenges are far greater than the pandemic situation. So why I'm talking about this, let's go to the slides. So here I am showing you the pre-pandemic course work progress and students, teachers involvement in one of a particular course. What was done physically, students went to workshop, did some woodwork and metal work by their hand, and it is a kind of outcome-based course. So this was performed very smoothly, like the product and budget, material purchase, hands-on session, and final products all was very systematically thought out, and it was easy to grasp, okay, what will be happening. So then when this pandemic situation came, this is developed later on, because I was conducting this course. So if you see, in the course progress and involvement, there is lots of more of the thing is coming. One of the important thing is, if I show you, like this circle is teacher, student, and workshop involvement. Okay, so we thought everything will be physical, so their involvement and every activity will be physical. But in pandemic, if you see on the left side, this is O and P is online and physical class conduction. So this is two separate things, that okay, there are some work that is possible during the shutdown or lockdown physically, and some is not. So we need to do that in online. So it's kind of a hybrid situation. So many things change. The way we think about the society, how the way we schedule our everyday work, everything changed. So this was like the
Yes,
different
yes, sir.
situation.
Sir, I'm really sorry to weigh in the middle, but sir, your presentation is not showing anymore.
It's not visible.
No, sir. Would you please share it again?
Okay, sorry. Oh, is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Please, sir, carry on.
Okay, okay. Sorry, maybe I have, instead of putting the hide, I put the stop sharing option. So this was the pre-pandemic situation I was talking about. Like everything was very in a systematic way that student, teacher, and the workshop will be involved in several phases of a course. Now, when the pandemic came, beside this students, teachers, and workshop involvement, another dynamics or challenge came, that some part can be done physical way and some will be done in online platform because of the outdoor activity was restricted or limited. So the situation changed now when we are again after the vaccination process, we are thinking about to be going in the physical classes. So the general tendency is okay, we will move to the pre-pandemic course work or course progress system. But here actually I am or we are questioning or try to question, like, do we need a change? Because in the pandemic everything is not very wrong or everything is not very inappropriate. It was a tough call of conducting architecture education, but we cannot omit everything because it is a long time of 1.5 or 2 years that students and teachers were involved in online activity and they got some benefits or demerits. But every it's not like that we can just go back to the regular activity again. So I think about the pre-pandemic work and the during the pandemic work, we need to do a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths of these two methods and opportunity, weakness, and threats? So we know that SWOT analysis is very important. So based on that, we may uh, go for post-pandemic. Um, we are thinking about the post-pandemic situation, and if we do that sort of analysis, and then we can think about a system that is more forward looking, because after 1.5 year or 2 years of online work or hybrid work, going back to the physical classes sometimes very challenging, and we will discuss about that and I will share something about that. It is actually the joint research outcome that me and some of the colleagues from the Chitkara University did in 2020-21 period. At that time, we asked students of around like 335 students from both of the country, India and Bangladesh, about getting feedback from them about the virtual studio or online studio. So the question was, do you think the shift enhanced your learning and understanding? So agreed is only 21%, and strongly disagree around 33%. So one third kind of disagreed that the virtual studio did not enhance their learning and understanding, and around 40% is neutral. So they didn't ask anything, give any feedback. So we can say okay, they are in between, and maybe it will be more towards the disagree or at that part. So the online or virtual studio has some drawback from students learning and understanding it, as per 335 students response. Then, which tools do you use to discuss design development in the virtual architectural design studio? A very important findings is, yes, people shared their architectural design or building design to the students in normal time by printing or discussing face to face. But whether that all changed or not, this was the motive of that question. So it's still 55% told that handmade, they prefer to discuss the design development of the studio through handmade sketch. Beside that, there is a significant portion is of course AutoCAD, PowerPoint. So that means the traditional system is not like they all move to digital medium. They still are doing handmade sketches, and that is a very important part of their design communication. Then we also asked, like, what are the we asked many questions, but I am showing important four points here because that will help our discussion. The third question was about what are the problems they face during their home stay during the pandemic. So two important findings which made us think differently like they are staying at their home, but they don't have the suitable environment. About 54% told that they lack suitable environment to study, because architectural study requires a lot of space for drawing, model making. So it is the home is not always a suitable place for them, because they used to live in the hostel or in the studio. They pass most of their time, so they could work in a spacious environment, but their house is not suitable enough. And then another important thing, of course, what we suffered most is the lack of physical access to the site. We took them or asked them, and they individually arranged many field visits that was completely off. And was the virtual mode of studying case examples. So when they are not able to go outside for physical site visit, we of course shared many videos or case studies to them. But do they think that studying case examples through virtual media was okay? So around 50% told it's partially okay, and 30% around told no, it's not okay. So these are the feedback which can inform our decision, what we should do or what we need to do. So after this feedback, our pandemic response was, in a way, what the teachers or I felt is um, the engagement, because eye to eye contact is very important for architecture study. Based on their even body movement, eye movement, we can understand, the teachers can understand whether they understand the topic or understand the concept clearly. So this face to face and eye to eye contact, that's are all off. So the participation was kind of limited. So we thought about allowing students in the project selection process, which never happened before. Like before introducing any project, we were discussing with the students that we are thinking about giving this project. So do you think there is any good example in your area, or can it be related to your hometown, because the access to the site or outside is very limited. So this involving students in the project selection process is the important response. Then our most of the class was discussion based. In the physical process, we also discussed, but at this time we had to discuss many things more, because they are staying at their house. So we even several times, for motivate them, or for they were in mental pressure also, so to easen them up, we had a lot of discussion regarding what's going on in the world now, how we are coping, how your family is doing. Beside that, of course, organizing a different seminar, and in the pandemic, we had a boost in organization seminar activity, because it was part of a lateral learning method. Different experts came and shared their opinion, because also the site visit was limited. And we are very flexible about the submission medium or format, that because student had like country like ours has not a very stable internet connection. So we have to be flexible in terms of submission, whether it can be jpg, scan, or pdf, anything. And also be cautious about these network issues. So maybe the time flexibility, okay, you can submit now, or you can submit at evening, because in many parts of Bangladesh, the internet connection disrupts as per day and night. It's so even asking them to give a revised date when they can think. So this was a different situation, because architects always work, or department always work on a very strict deadline and other things. We have to move away from that. So that's one thing. And another, don't push for outdoor activity. So if the student is comfortable and feels okay, his family feels okay, then he can go outdoor. Otherwise, we didn't push them. But now, when we are trying to be back in a normal situation, the post-pandemic situation, as I was telling before, it's more challenging than the pandemic time, because we face now different kind of challenges, which we offered during the pandemic time, but is not working well. The first thing, I think it's lack of the long time concentration. I find maybe there are some students here. They can also maybe differ with me. Please, it's a panel discussion, so I would ask you to have your opinion on that. And also, it's the lack of long time concentration is not from the students' point. Even teacher was telling that during the pandemic time we have to we get used to these digital mediums or platforms so much that we cannot now pass 5 to 10 minutes without holding the mobile or seeing a video. It's like kind of a we cannot concentrate for 2 or 3 hours long in specific reading materials. In between that, we watch movies, maybe some parts of the trailer or any video. So, and also the obsession in social media, because physical access was limited. Of course, we made or did many activities in social media. Even I remember we do cultural activities in social media. The long time concentration is very important part for architecture design process, because to develop drawings and other things, it takes much time. So we are facing that, okay, we cannot have that much concentration now. Then a gap in time management of submission. So since there was a flexible time, or also even there were some submission format was flexible, student could submit in different ways. And for this 1.5 or 2 years, they didn't have to that much bother about the time management of specific meeting a specific deadline. Now we are suffering that students want to change submission date quite frequently, like, okay, we cannot um, submit now because this, but maybe this is a post-pandemic effect. Then there is, of course, the learning gap, like the drawing quality, because those who started the architectural education during this pandemic, we could not um, uh, guide them in that way directly about holding a pen and the line thickness, everything. Based on their photograph taking or video sharing, we understood what they draw. So there is, of course, a learning gap in drawing quality. Also in model making, because outdoor was limited for moving, we preferred 3D model making. So paper model making was not good quality model. We don't see much now. And communication is also important, like how I am communicating, expressing my thoughts in front of a good number of audience, that is suffered. And the presentation, of course, like I present and what will I present. And also these online classes has some kind of comfort, because don't need to move out, and as you know, Dhaka is heavily congested by traffic, and it's one of the major problems in our cities. So um, even they are preferring now, sometimes they prefer now that, okay, it would be better if we do this type of class online. And physically, I see a less activeness physically, and also lack of field visit during the pandemic time, now affecting their design conceptualization process. And another challenge is we are more about now with their struggles due to pandemic time. I want to emphasize this point specifically, because during the pandemic, we thought that yes, we are not connected much, but at the same time, what happened, we used to keep frequent contact with the students, because since we are not meeting them, we are texting them, we are having an online meeting, or they're whatsapping us, or several in different way we try to keep that communication. And based on that, we understood their family struggles, their mental pressures, everything. And that was a eye opener for us also. Maybe in several cases, I didn't know that these girls or this boys family is suffering that much due to the pandemic. Their economic activity gets slowed, they may have not paid their fees in due time. That time we had to know what's happening, and we understand their situation. And now after the pandemic, we have like, okay, we are more about their struggles, and kind of we become little bit, I think I become little bit more soft to them, because I know their background now more openly. So it's also affecting my decision taking. I cannot be very strict. It's my personal opinion, not the department's, of course. And another thing is administration, or the management is decision is like going towards the physical class rather than going for the hybrid, because if we there is a challenge also, because if we allow them to be some activity in hybrid, maybe the physical activity that we want to promote, that will be hampered, or the two different evaluation methodology will differ. So the administration is towards more to the physical classes. So I will just end based on this discussion. What is my opinion? I think the way forward can be the hybrid education system, because they are more comfortable with this situation, and still 20%, if you remember, agreed that this education or online or virtual studio did develop their learning and teaching. So maybe that 20% also needs to be in the system, so we can continue and further upgrade our education system or online education system, addressing the learning gap gradually. It's not possible like in one semester I will address all the learning gap. Very specifically, I need to identify and address, not in a single semester, but gradually, maybe 2 or 3 semester, I will gradually address those learning gap. Otherwise, we cannot move forward much. Again, exploring options of alternative physical model making for a tech savvy generation. My students also, I see they like technology much, or devices, or many other softwares. So they are exposed to this kind of thing more during the pandemic. So they think physical model making is a primitive idea, or even our final year thesis jury will see a lot of 3D printing model, 3D model printing activity went on. So alternative physical model making needs to be, because physical model making is not kind of a only activity, it also develop proportion and several things. It informs the design. But if we move from physical model making to 3D, we need more study about that, like how we can get better idea. And another thing is addressing the mental well-being as a major focus in the curriculum. I don't know what the case of India, or during the pandemic, the mental wellness is a major hot topic of discussion, and students are very frustrated. The students, most of the students suffered severely during the pandemic, and it's still going on. So mental well-being in the architecture is not that much addressed, because we always try to be in a specific deadline, and also we are having much pressure. And as you know, architecture is the most difficult subject in the world ranking also. So there is a model of Stanford University, it's called life model, where mental well-being is part of the curriculum. So it may take time, but I would take this opportunity also, like how we can involve this well-being issue in the curriculum. And also teachers role in a technical subject is very much diversified after the pandemic. There is no way that inclusive studio is a major priority should be there. Like in the studio, teachers, students, experts, different stakeholders, they all need to be involved in this technical subject, because the teacher's role after the pandemic is, he's a teacher, he is an advisor, he's a student counselor, maybe part of that he's a motivator. And after all this, we are teaching a technical subject. So maybe for ease of this activity, the studio should be more inclusive and helps teacher to perform different role effectively. So yeah, that's my um, presentation. So I would request maybe Konika ma'am will have some reflection on this, and students may differ. I completely okay with it. Thank you.
Madam, your microphone is turned.
Okay, thank you, Rizwan, for this insightful presentation. I have my own take on post pandemic architectural education, but I see that most of the points that I'm going to bring forward are overlapping with the points that you have brought forward. So I completely comprehend your bringing out the recommendations and the strategies of having hybrid education as the new normal. So I'll take up the rest of it while I'm talking. But
Okay.
thank you very much for this insightful presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful presentation and your valuable inputs. I would like to now focus on the students I have been asked right now. My concern would be to know about, at this point, I would like to know about their experiences. I would request them to share their experience of architectural studies during the COVID-19 pandemic, and also its impact later on their life. Like right now, what are the impacts they're facing after such long time in online? What are the impacts they're facing right now? I'm sorry, do you hear me right now? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat myself again. At this point, I'd like to focus on the students about their experiences during the pandemic, how they have managed to study during the pandemic, their experience to it, and also its impact later on, like right now, what are they facing. And again, I would also like to know about the outcomes. If there was any outcome that they have found more acceptable in online rather than right now. So I'd like to welcome Tanya Rawal right now. She is a final year architecture student, and she's currently working as an intern at HUK Berlin in Germany. Her current interests are in sustainable design, affordable housing, and research. She believes that each building has a story to tell and each space speaks for itself, creating a wonder of living. Apart from this, you will find her clicking pictures and creating digital art whenever she is not geeking out on American sitcoms. Tanya Rawal, can you hear me?
Yes, hello
Yes, hello
everyone.
everyone. Okay. Hello. I would like to hear your take on the experience that you have had during pandemic and its effect later on, like right now. And also, was there any outcomes that you found more desirable during the pandemic than right now? Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
The best part, when I was doing my architectural education offline, the best part was one-on-one discussions with the professors, and I guess that rendered a beautiful output in the end. The process of creating layers of design, on top, one on top of another, and we used to scribble each and everything. But then again, in the online mode, we shifted to whiteboards, and it changed the situation, but up to some level. But it was not as before. So yeah, and the architectural education is just not a student professor thing. During offline mode, I remember there was one stage, particular design stage, when the professors were just onlookers and the design critiques were given by our peers, and that was the most useful part, uh, because each and every individual thinks differently, so in the end we could get different solutions to one problem. So when we shifted to online mode, I think this went much better, because in online mode we used to call each other up, because we were already at our places, and then we used to set up Zoom meeting calls or even Google Meet, and then we used to share our screens with our designs, and then we used to give each other some feedbacks. And I guess those feedbacks were more personal because it was one on one, and it was very personal, and because during the college everyone used to surround us and listen to us what we were talking, but here it was a very private space, and yes, we could give each other more useful answers. Yes, and I think the best part about this online mode was I I could save up travel time. I could not stress this enough. I used to save up 2 hours of travel every day. And by the end of this VDS virtual design studio, I kind of worked my way out of around this, and I used this VDS to my advantage. I already set up pre-scheduling with my thesis guide and online reviews. It worked out very well in the end, and I could focus on networking, even though I was working part time earlier. But during the pandemic, it made my work much easier, and I could really take out more time out of that. I even saved printing cost. That was mostly because we used to share our screen, and the best part, isolation really helped me to focus on my own ideas. There were no distraction, and I used to develop really great architectural thesis and design project concepts, that too without distraction. And for me it was a higher level of comfort working from home as compared to working in design studios, because as I mentioned it before, it was full of distractions, all the kids chatting and everything. But my place was, very relatively calm and peaceful, so I could work very well. I used to learn new softwares, and even I virtually visited so many places. There's so much to explore on the internet, and I did that. I took online courses, which helped me with the was a really plus point, and I improved all the necessary skills that was required to enter the job market. Yes. So in the end, I'll also like to say that the pressure on us was high as ever. The every design studios, they were conducted in the same tone. The only change, the only shift was from the physical studios to the online studios. And at first it became a reasonable substitution because we didn't have any other option. But however, in the end, after a deadline, we kind of lacked a reliable support of network of peers, because whenever I remember, I used to give my design viva, and if in any case there was, some up and downs, I used to go to my friends and they used to tell me it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. But along after this, I needed to wait for my friends to call me. So it used to take up some time. But and then we used to bounce off ideas as well, after even after a review goes wrong, or maybe even a envious peek at your rival friends, that what is she doing and what is her design. So yeah, like that. I also agree with Rizwan sir that online fatigue was one of the major problems we faced. But I guess during our discussions, during our online classes, some breaks could be helpful.
Thank you, Tanya Rawal. From your tone, I can understand you have enjoyed the online phase to the full. You have taken the advantage of the online to the fullest. But is there any challenge you are facing currently after when we have switched from online to offline? I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes, now I
I
can hear
forget
you.
exactly. So what I'm saying is, I can understand fully that you have enjoyed the time you have online. You have taken advantage of the time in online to the fullest. But what um, I would like to know from you is the fact that now when we have switched to offline, is there any problem that you are facing rather than when you are in online? What are the impacts right now?
To mention before, I did 3 years of architectural education offline and then 2 years of architectural online. So those 3 years were the most important part, and these are the formative years. So a shift from offline, online, and then offline, to me didn't make much difference because I had the best of both worlds.
Okay, I can see that you have actually had the exactly you have your background or the base was actually well founded, and then you have just taken the advantage of the time to
Yes.
culture nurture yourself. So it's great to hear from you, Tanya Rawal. Now I would
Thank you.
like to go to Aditi Pathak. She is also from Chitkara University. She is a pre-final year student of CSPA and is currently studying at Chang'an University, Seoul, South Korea, as an exchange student. Her present work focuses on urban level socio-cultural design that aims to bring people and community together and revive the urban worlds. She is passionate about art, culture, and is currently on a journey to explore the city of Seoul and all that it has to offer before leaving for her professional internship next semester. Aditi Pathak, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can. So, hello everyone, I'm Aditi, and what I have to speak about the situation, uh, actually, I can hear myself twice.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, that's perfect. So, what I had to say was that the thing is, when I was a fresher, like my first 2 years were offline. And then, when as soon as I moved into third year, that's when in architecture school you start taking bigger projects like contours and the grid planning and all those heavy scale projects. That's when we shifted online. And for us as students, it was like quite difficult because let's just say contours. That's not something you can directly understand on computers, or even if it's grid planning and everything. That's when we needed our professors the most to like hold pencils in our hand and show us like this is how you go around, this is how you create it. So that's what I feel we left out. But honestly, if I'm to say that my teachers left no stone unturned, they use Kahoot quizzes, they use games online to make sure that even if it's online, they're making it as interesting as possible for all of us to join in, because online fatigue is of course a scene here. And after that, when we shifted online, one of the major problems then again was the social impact that COVID had on us. Like me and my family got affected by COVID in the first wave, like when it was completely unsure, and there was like a lot of negative environment around it. Like we were all scared and we had no idea what to do. At that point, I don't know, I was open enough with my professors to let them know that this is the situation at my family right now, and I'm sorry, I'm not in a place to work. And they were like very considerate to understand. And like Rizwan sir said, they were flexible enough to give me the change in the submission deadlines. But if I'm to see, what about the professor? Had a professor been suffering like that, what effect would it have on all of us? Like, I was responsible for a single person's work, but had the professor been suffering something like that, the whole batch would have been affected. So, you see, the power dynamic also plays a huge role in this case. Like, who has the bigger responsibility here? The professor was flexible, but could I be flexible in learning if the professor wanted me to learn according to his schedule? So that gives a huge responsibility to us. It becomes more of a team effort, unlike when it was offline and the professor used to come. Also, then we shifted slowly to the hybrid mode when we were doing some bigger projects. And one thing that I noticed was when we shifted to hybrid mode, we all were given a free will that who all are interested to come should come. So I genuinely was super interested. I wanted to go back to my lectures, to the studios to engage with people. So when I went in our whole studio, there were like 10, 15 students because a lot of them lived so far away that it wasn't practically possible for them to come here. And that posed another problem for not only us, but the teachers to how to equalize both the situations since half of the batch is online and half of the batch is offline. So how do you take both of these phases in a similar pace? At that point, our professors like used to take same lecture twice, like in the first half with the online student and then the second half with the offline students. So I would say just kudos to all of them. They helped me a lot in every possible way. Like even my senior Tanya's told, we used to have in-class activities where professors used to have simulation of some situations. Like let's say we are the customers and you have to ship out your idea to us. You have to pitch and like show us how your design sells. So these kind of things, I don't think we can learn in a digital environment for this thing. That's why we are like social beings. You need the whole social area around you to grow as a person, not just as an architect. And also, like we all have been talking, that architecture is something we cannot do at the comfort of our homes. Like, if I am to give an example, whenever I'm making a models, on one hand, my mother is like, "You haven't eaten something." On second hand, my father is like, "Oh my God, you need this stuff. I need this." Like in normal homes, we don't have a whole big office room. We just have one common room, which my father used to use for his office meetings. My mother used for her own lectures. I used for my class meetings. So it became quite chaotic in that sense. So if I'm to choose, I would definitely go for offline mode. But then again, the online part gave me a lot of free time to focus on my skills, on what I do like. Because in offline mode, my time was already pre divided that I had a lecture from this to this, then I have to go to this studio and this studio. But in online situation, I had the flexibility to decide what I want to do with my own time. I started working part time, I started doing some internships, I did some lectures online. So it was a skill building thing, but I believe that if we talk about the interaction, the learning process, like in Hindi, I say we have a saying called Guru Bina Gat Nahi. So जब तक मुझे मेरा गुरु नहीं मिलेगा, we cannot learn something. No matter how many screens I get, I need the professor to teach me. Like I cannot just read 1,000 books and become a scholar on my own. Same thing when I came here to Seoul and now I'm studying offline. That's the difference I see. Now we get to play with those physical models, like Rizwan sir told, how important is it to have the conceptual mass models. That's what I feel I was devoid of when I was studying online. I could not picture the things clearly. Also, the fact that I could not go out as what I consider myself to be an observer. You look around the city, you see how spaces are planned, you see some very unique thing in a building and you try to implement it in your design. But when you're doing the design online in your own four walled room, you don't have those different options to look around. Now, if I go around the city, I explore and I see new designs, my own design strategies are improving just by observing. So that's one thing we lagged, I believe, in the online case. So if I am to conclude, I would say the education part is definitely way better if it's done offline. But use online mode has its own benefits. So if hybrid is the new normal, I would believe that we need to define the hybrid. Like what roles of the hybrid should we stick to the online part, and what roles of hybrid can be done online, offline as well. Just like we have to draw a thin line where the hybrid combines online and offline. So that's my take on it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Aditi Pathak. Very well put. In fact, we have actually, you have, I'm sorry, I always forget. I'm really sorry for that. So what I'm, very well put, Aditi Pathak. And in fact, um, you have actually talked about this crucial topic that we are actually aiming for a hybrid mode, and where is the line. I think we would have time to discuss about that in later on. So thank you for now. I would like to now welcome our students from the Daffodil International University, Ibn Rabbani Anik and Shamima Afroz Pia. They have just defended their urban studio final project yesterday. It was a very interesting project focusing on the development of an area that has been engulfed by the current urban sprawl of the Dhaka city. So I'd like to welcome Onik first. Onik is a landscape enthusiast. He believes in spaces that transcends the idea of inside to a flowing story of space and nature. He is also a painter, a dancer, and craves for hanging out with friends. Onik, can you hear me? Hello, Onik, can you hear me? There is so much sound coming from your side. Yes, it's okay now. It's not fine. Okay, Onik. Onik, would you? I'm giving you some time to solve the issue. In the meantime, I would like to move on to Pia. Onik, uh, you can mute the microphone for now. I would like to move to Pia in this moment. Pia is very much engrossed by vernacular architecture. She is into exploring different traditional materials like mud, bamboo, bricks, thatch, etc. And there are numerous possibilities. And she has also zeal for traveling and tasting different foods from different places. So, Pia, if you can hear me, I would like to hear your inputs on the discussion topic.
Thank you, ma'am. During COVID 19, we had stayed at home for 2 years. So, having been at home in pandemic for a long time, we were getting used to this online situation. So, now being offline again, we are facing some problems. As I have to interact with a lot of people all of a sudden, it shows that I can't socialize with people. There is a lack of communication. I can't present now at the level we used to have. There seems to be a deficit somewhere. somewhere. After the pandemic, our model skills are getting slower than before. Then I could not adapt to stay away from education activities and stay at home for a long time. As we used to meet teachers and friends, classwork was done together, design was discussed together. Because of COVID situation, we could not do this all of a sudden. Every day, we constantly spending time in front of the phone screen. Though our teachers are always helpful,
Pia, your microphone is turned off. Pia, open.
hello, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes, your microphone was turned off. We cannot hear you. Yes, go on, please.
Ma'am, our teachers was very helpful.
Pia. If you can hear me, would you? Hello, Pia. Can you hear me?
She's not here, maybe.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Oni, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I would like to know about your too much sound, Oni. Too much sound. We cannot hear you.
ম্যাম এখন ঠিক আছে?
Yes, it is fine now. You can go on. We'd like to hear your input over the matter. The floor is yours
Uh,
now.
From my point of view, it is not appropriate to make architecture online because for online class, we could not go to the site visit for design. And when we are doing face-to-face design class before COVID-19, our teacher would mark design mistakes on the sheets of our design plans, but it was not possible to get guides like this in online classes anymore. So it is very difficult to and many time we also could not properly explain our design concepts to our teachers for online classes, and it was put a mental pressure also on us. And after pandemic, we are having some problems with architecture classes. We are overwhelmed by the many days of continuous classes from home. So we have some problem like a long-term journey and time maintaining overhaul. But I am very happy to say that this is the first time 2022 we are um, from whole Bangladesh we are presenting a online public jury uh, in our vacation house public jury. So it is see it was a good experience for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Oni. What are the challenges that you are facing right now after when you have switched from online to offline? What are the challenges that you face currently? What is your biggest challenge right now when you have switched to offline?
I have faced some time maintaining and a long-term journey um, from my varsity to home. So I have some time maintaining problem.
So I see it is like hitting the traffic is like a huge issue. I think it is same
Yes,
for
sir.
the both context, like for Bangladesh and India. For the both context, it is like a burning issue. Other than that, is there any other problem in terms of your learning attitudes, your concentration spans, like Rizwan sir was talking about? Is there any problem you have been facing? I think I think the internet is not currently working properly. So after this session, I would like to move on to our Kanika Bansal ma'am, Professor Kanika Bansal ma'am, for her inputs. Ma'am, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, a very, very warm good afternoon to everyone. We are baking in the heat of 44.5 degrees approximately at Punjab here. And amidst this baking heat, all of us have got together here to also discuss about this burning topic, as Lamia just mentioned, of how COVID 19 has impacted architectural education. And not much has been left for me to deliberate upon. A lot of it has already been talked about, Mr. Rizwan, and both my students have really collated their thoughts very well about how was their experience of COVID-19. I specifically chose the two of them because the two of them have had the flavor of learning both online and offline. One student, Tanya, who took up architecture in 2017 and did her basic studies for the first 3 years in an offline mode and was absolutely ready. We call it the foundation studies, the first 3 years. So the student is partially ready to take on after the first 3 years. So that is why her take here was that online did not hinder much of her learning. However, if we looked at Aditi Pathak's word of mouth and her say on COVID-19, she took up the first two basic years into an online mode. However, the third year, which hones your first 2 years and prepares you for your advanced studies, was missed by her because there was a drastic and a sudden shift from offline to online mode. So probably the way she collated her thoughts and where, so therefore Aditi could bring out both the advantages and the disadvantages of having the offline and online mode because she's tasted the flavor of both and her studies were impacted because of both. So my presentation today is also going to talk about um, if is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am. We can see the screen properly.
Can anybody confirm that my
Yeah,
screen is
yeah, it's okay.
all right?
Yes, ma'am. It is fine. Just press
Okay.
the hide, ma'am. If it is okay with you, just press the hide.
Okay. So my probably looked at pandemic as a catalyst for change in architectural pedagogy. Why have I named my um, discourse so? Because before the outbreak of pandemic, we never thought that architecture could be taught in such a way where the students and the faculty would not be face to face and would not be sharing an envelope, and everything would be enclosed and boxed up into a 20 inches screen. So as we all know, architecture education in India and of course in many of the countries in the world across have their own governing bodies. And in India, this architecture education is approved by the Council of Architecture, which is a regulatory body which is responsible for maintaining the standards of education in all the architectural institutes of all over the India. And this body has defined guidelines for academic curriculum and teaching learning pedagogy in an application oriented manner. Now, all of us, this is not new to us that in architecture, the traditional classroom learning promotes hands on, one to one interactions and the use of graphical and illustrative methods, as has been very well illustrated and very well brought out by Mohammad Sheikh Rizwan as well. And here are a few glimpses of what are the outcomes of such kind of hands-on and face-to-face activities where you have a lot of theoretical submissions, and the students gain an advantage of making the design portfolios, and the sheets are made, and there are of course model making sessions, and there are peers and team building sessions, and you see the tangible outcomes in the form of sheets, models, and the students are exposed to juries, and they are supposed to stand up in front of a professional jury who we call from outside and explain their concepts, explain their design proposals, and in a way, as Aditi mentioned, be able to sell what they've conceived throughout the semester, be able to make models, be able to make sheets, and of course audiovisual presentations are also integral part of architectural training through open juries and viva voces. And of course, what architecture education before the pandemic occurred was all about building teams, having discussions, all about having the peers getting together to have fun filled activities, and most of all, the experiential learning, being on the site, interacting with the masons, interacting with the structure engineers, and using your hands on, and of course having some sort of collaborative activities or specialized studios, of course being mentored by your teachers. So as you know, the students also felt that architecture is not about learning from the guru or from your teacher, but it's also about understanding your environment, observing, learning from your peers, learning from your seniors, interacting with them. And of course, as man is a social animal, so you cannot be bound to sit in an enclosure. However, what happened in 19, or probably the beginning of 2020, the COVID-19, which was a global crisis, it impacted the existing education system. It forced institutions to switch online modes of learning. For students of architectural programs in a developing country like India, this was an unprecedented change and brought in a new set of challenges and opportunities. Of course, it was a worldwide challenge, not only in India. And with the extension of the pandemic induced lockdown, which was a bigger challenge, it was all because of this lockdown which happened. Did the educational institutions, the students, and all other stakeholders opt for this new normal of dependence on remote learning, which of course has its own pros and cons over the experience. The challenges were to find ways to overcome reduced face to face teaching learning. The technology adoption in architecture program was one of the unique novelties which occurred especially in the Indian context, which was a response to the prevailing situations caused by COVID-19, along with the traditional practices in teaching and assessing courses of an architectural program, switching over completely to technology. Now, this was absolutely a challenge for all of us. However, it meant finding technological replications to the faculty and students, inspiring yet creative spirit of personal one-to-one interactions during lectures, seminars, and the most challenging were the design studios. However, as just deliberated upon, it saw invariable unique reflexes and responses from students and faculty pursuing architectural education. Now, of course, there was a challenge and there were question marks, and the life came to a standstill because of a lockdown. But because the duration was unprecedented, we did not know how long will this COVID-19 take us, So, of course, there was a response, and the response was online teaching. And we tried our level best. Much of it was already comprehended by both of my students, that we took it up as a challenge. Initially, we did not know what online teaching platforms can be used, so our university was very pro. They organized the much needed training sessions for all the faculty, for all the students, so that we could acquaint ourselves to what online platforms are available, how to operate them, how to for example, a little thing like sharing a screen or muting yourself or creating an environment where you don't have disturbance while you are learning or while you are delivering a lecture. Just a while ago, Aditi was saying that we were all enclosed in an envelope and we did not have office type houses, of course. So the limitation of your space and everybody doing their own work, a person lecturing, a person receiving a lecture. So all these were the challenges, of course, but then nevertheless, we did have online discussions, online studios, theory classes. A very big challenge was brought about by taking an online thesis jury, an A0 size sheet, compressing itself to fit into a 20 inches screen was the biggest challenge. I was invited as a jury member by 2 or 3 colleges in my region as an online jury member, and it was absolutely challenging for me to evaluate and assess the sheets. Projects of big scales were being proposed by the students, and looking at the output in an on a screen was absolutely new and challenging, though we adapt ourselves over these 2 years, and now we still understand and we can still comprehend the drawings faster, and we can discuss the streets faster. But nowhere down the line, according to me, does it compare or match the face to face, or the in hand discussions where we scribble over the sheets, the student receives it, and the discussions really become into fruitful and absolutely meaningful outputs. And then, of course, one of the most interesting teaching learning activity was webinar. Now, these webinars were one way of um, putting your time to a useful output, a productive use of your time, because of course there were screen fatigues, there were online fatigues attached to all this, but then at the same time, sitting at your own place, you could take exposure of whatever was being offered to you during that time. And because everything was to a standstill, so webinars were the new thing. So you really had to pickpocket for your own self from the bucket of the immense plethora of webinars that were being conducted, I think, across all the domains across the world. So not only national exposure did this webinar brought across, it brought across absolute global exposure for all of us. And as the students already mentioned, it was also time for us to also create and innovate. So we did art workshops, students and faculty workshops, and we also had some mind and well-being relaxing sessions. For example, if you see the left bottom corner image, we did have some yoga sessions, and we also had some social responsibility activities where it brought in some life in the students. They used to click pictures, make posters at home, and then project them on the screen. And there were online competitions of the kind, and we had a tree plantation drive during this COVID-19 as a response, where each student was supposed to plant one tree in the premises of their house, send a screenshot, and then we collated them into a very nice collage. So um, it was not only about teaching architecture, but I think it was also keeping the spirits of the student alive to learn, to keep themselves involved. As Aditi was just mentioning, there were so many families which got affected by COVID-19. And every day I was receiving about 5 mails, 6 mails. My father is in the hospital, my mother is in the hospital. I myself am a victim of COVID. I lost my father in the second wave of COVID. So it's not only about keeping architectural education alive, but it was also keeping the students spirit of teaching and learning alive. And you know not only the students, but the faculty also had to find their ways, their means of involving themselves into various activities. So we as faculty members made our collaborations, made our connections, and we explored our domains, and sort of delivered a plethora of webinars across, not only to our students but cross culturally also. I happened to deliver one of those in Daffodil International University also, and then we also took up a lot of online courses. So this period, the COVID-19 was a response not only for the students to learn, but also the faculty had to keep their motivations up. The delivery of a lecture, we see out of a batch of 80 students, we see 20 participants, 25 participants, and then all the rest of them have their own excuses, internet not working, or affected by COVID, and so on and so forth. And none of them wants to switch their camera on. So you kind of practically face a dead screen, with only 20 blank icons falling across, and you really don't know whether they are listening to you or you're talking to a dead wall and banging your head into a dead wall. But then as a faculty, the responsibility was so immense that you had to devise mechanisms, or you had to keep them involved. So we devised a lot of activities which were quiz based, which were activity based. And similarly, the faculty kept themselves involved by writing a lot of research papers, by enrolling themselves into online courses, and so on and so forth. So we've had a very tough time. Not, I mean, when I'm saying we, it's not only the students and faculty of Chitkara School of Planning and Architecture, but I mean, the whole academic fraternity as a whole has had a very tough time coping up with this COVID-19. Nevertheless, where there is a challenge, there is a way. And I think we've had a very fruitful way forward. However, as I said, the faculty had to find their own ways of keeping themselves engaged and motivated. So, myself and a team of three more faculty members from Chitkara University, Dr. Harveen Bhandari, Dr. Amit Mittal, and Dr. Urvashi Tandon, all four of us got together to brainstorm as to how we could address these problems and record the responses. So we started doing researches in these domains, and very surprisingly, I we generally validate our researchers through the EFAs and the CFAs and all the statistical tools, but my research here, which is already published, was also validated today by the viewpoints which were brought out by Mr. Sheikh, Mohammad, Rizwan, and all the four students, because all the four students also brought out the same things, and of course Dr. Rizwan also brought out the same thing as we could gather while the research was going on. So the first research was based on the faculty, because the students were not pro. And after the outbreak of pandemic, I think after 2 months of the outbreak of pandemic, the faculty came back to the campus. However, the students worked online from their respective places. So that was the time we thought we must interview and see and take the viewpoints of all the faculties as to what is their viewpoint of teaching, learning, and most of all assessing students in undergraduate programs, which was primarily considering the technology aided learning. So, very surprisingly, it was found out that the faculty accepted change and the adoption of new technological pedagogical teaching practices. And this study that I'm mentioning was primarily to investigate the factors influencing faculty's behavioral intention in the adoption of online teaching learning. Because, as I said, none of us were pro to it, and all of us had to attune ourselves. Initially there was a lot of resistance, also there was a lot of reluctance, also you were not attuned to the platforms, you were not skilled at using your laptops, your infrastructure, and there were a lot of net lag. So the university management also supported by not only providing skills and training to the faculty members, but also providing appropriate infrastructure in terms of IT facilities and networking to get into this online mode. So the switch was overnight, and the response to the switch was also overnight. So uh, as fast the COVID-19 struck, as fast we could respond to the COVID-19. And here in this study, we could analyze the factors which impacted the faculty's intention to adopt to online teaching, which was, of course, the provision of reliable technology with updated software and hardware facilities, without which nothing could have been possible. Of course, the faculty was motivated and was willing to acquaint to new technology and hone their soft skills. Now, it was also important that the faculty could reach out to the students with an added advantage of flexibility in time and span. And we do curse our phones, we do curse our WhatsApp, but believe me, during these 2 years, they acted as blessings, because they were the only mediums through which we could connect to all these students at one time. And it was fast connection, as Rizwan mentioned, that whether or not they have anything else with them, they would always be embedded in their phones. So it was very easy, very handy, and most of them were within reach. Communication through innovative technology aided tools and use of web based content delivery, the convenience of access to students' works and handiness of evaluation. You could evaluate the work whenever you have time, because everything was coming online. And then also tools like Google Classroom, where you could create a classroom and you could create a group submission where each one of you could submit your work. And the conflict of I submitted in time, but the teacher saying I got it late, can also be resolved, because when you submit it online, everything becomes a recorded thing. So the teacher can also very well project your time of submission, and the student cannot claim that I was in time or I was late, or probably, uh, you know, I submitted, but it didn't reach you somehow. So all those problems were also sorted by these online methods, and adequate facilitating conditions from the parent institution in terms of software training and infrastructure were also very important. And in addition, there were also platforms for online assessment. So since the students were studying online, the examination patterns had to be online. So we revised a complete set of online examination system, and we conducted all the examinations through a platform which was My Anatomy. And believe me, before we opened it out to the students to train them how to use My Anatomy for these online assessments and examinations, one of my colleagues and myself, Mr. Lohit Jain, we sat overnights for days together to understand how the platform will work, how the question papers will be uploaded, how the student will really have a look at it, will the student be able to submit the entire set, and so on and so forth. So the challenges were very many for all of us, and it was a challenge for us first to make a question paper, to run a question paper, and then of course for the students to attempt that question paper. Because while attempting a paper, there were a lot of technical glitches, there were a lot of network glitches. The students were not able to upload their images, maybe because of the sizes, and so on and so forth. So every day was a new day, every exam was a new challenge for us, and it has been a really tough time, but nevertheless, we've all coped up well. Another
Madam,
point
madam,
was,
uh,
yeah.
I'm really sorry to interrupt at this point, madam. We have another program scheduled in 10
Okay, so
minutes
I'm
or
just going to
so.
quickly wind up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
So after this, we took the students' viewpoint and did another survey and another. And unlike to what the faculty said, the faculty had drivers, which means they were motivated towards learning and teaching. The students found more barriers towards teaching and learning, and all these papers are available on the IEEE website also. And these are the outcomes: that there were time risks, interaction risks, technology risks. Now, these are the technical terms, but these have already been covered by the students and Rizwan as well. And this was yet another research done by us, which has been published in the Emerald Journal of Engineering and Construction and Architecture Management, where we studied the students' viewpoint of what drove them towards online teaching, learning, and assessment, and what restricted them towards this. Nevertheless, the new normal is the hybrid system of education. Just recently, we had this very interesting hybrid event where all the experts, not only from India, but of course, the global exposure, Dr. Rohit Jigyasu and Chandler McCoy from Paris were also there, and the deliberations were done. And also, this site visit was done parallel. So the experts could deliver, and the students could go and actually physically see the deliberations. So as Aditi said, that we have to devise a very fine line between what has to be offline and what has to be online. I think this event was quite an example of what Aditi was trying to say. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for offshooting time because I'm very close to this subject. So thank
Thank
you
you,
very
madam.
much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your resourceful presentation. It was really helpful for us, and I had so many questions to ask to the panelists, but I don't have much time. So if anyone has anything to say about, we can come to the conclusion that everyone is proposing this hybrid learning methods as the new normal, as opposed to this problem that has created during this pandemic and after this pandemic. So if anyone has anything to say as the ending note to how that hybrid method should be, hybrid mode should be, how to what extent it should be online or offline. If you have any input regarding this, I would like to take it for 1 minute, and then we would close the session for today. Please.
Okay, I will just be very brief within 1 minute, because after the ma'am's presentation and also hearing the students, So there are several important inputs to me, because Aditi and Tanya, what you shared, really a topic of discussion now. Like a part of the education system may go towards online. Maybe a part of the education system, I mean, maybe there will be offered Bachelor of Architecture in online. There is a probability, because you have rightly addressed three important issues of our times. Like, one is the travel time for a developing, or in many developed countries even, reducing the travel time is also, time is money, we know, so it's very important. And also the reduced cost, as we know that architecture education is expensive. Model making, sheet printing, it takes much cost, so that is also reduced in online. And also your one-to-one personal space, the idea of personal space other than having in a group discussion, it will actually inform maybe the future of maybe architectural design course, or some diploma even, maybe will be done completely in online. And also I will thank personally Konika ma'am, because I mainly focused on the studio environment and others, and madam rightfully showed vivid experience and analysis of how teachers actually, the very important point, how teachers also get into this technique, and what were the challenges and how they overcome it. So thank you ma'am for that. And also thank you yeah, Rabbani and Pia also, because during the COVID, another thing happened for Daffodil University, that we have moved from city campus to permanent campus, which is around 1.5 hour journey, which was Rabbani mentioned, like, okay, travel time or journey. It's actually that it takes much time. So it's also an issue. So okay, I will be very brief, and thank you everyone. If anyone has any last word to say, maybe. Thank you.
Just one last word of gratitude and thank you to the Daffodil International University and Mr. Rizwan for conceiving this event so well and having it in place, and Lamia for moderating this so well and building this, setting the stage on, and moderating the session so well. And my dear lovely students Aditi and Tanya, thank you very much. You've been very, very good, and your insights were very, very meaningful, and I think there are a lot of takeaways. And thanks to the two students from Daffodil International University, your viewpoint is also very important, because every context has its own challenges and own responses. So thank you very much everyone, and thank you, and we look forward to more of such events in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir. And a heartiest thanks to the students for being with us today. And with this, I'm now closing this session. Please, everyone, have a nice day.